dare you?
This is my house!
It was supposed to be the perfect homecoming. Frank Matthews had spent the last 2 weeks in Tokyo securing a cybersecurity deal that could change his career forever. All he wanted now was a quiet evening in his own home, the kind of peace that comes with familiarity. He could already picture it, the soft hum of his fridge, the subtle scent of pine from the diffuser in the hallway, the creak of the floorboard just outside his bedroom door. Home. But when Frank opened that door, what greeted him wasn't peace. It was a stranger, or rather, someone he knew too well. Cynthia Hayes, standing barefoot in his living room, holding a half-finished glass of his favorite Bordeaux. Her expression froze like a thief caught mid-theft, eyes wide, lips trembling. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and poisonous. Then she blinked and did something he'd only seen people do when panic meets privilege. She squared her shoulders, clutched the robe around her, and demanded, "Who are you, and what are you doing on this property?" Frank's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "You know exactly who I am, Cynthia. This is my house." Guilt flickered in her eyes, a brief confession before the lie. Her hand went to her phone, trembling. "A black man is trying to break into this residence," she stammered. "I'm alone and scared. Please send officers immediately." Frank didn't move. He didn't shout. He just stood there, watching her act, noting every word, every lie, every breath. His phone was already recording, and when the wail of sirens began to echo down the quiet suburban street, Frank knew. The trap had just closed. To understand how it got here, you have to rewind. Frank Matthews wasn't just another homeowner. He was a cybersecurity specialist, the kind of man who spent his life in the shadows of firewalls and encrypted networks, protecting people who didn't even know his name. He was methodical, logical, disciplined, a man who believed in evidence more than emotion. After years of work, he finally bought his dream home in a quiet neighborhood just outside Dallas, a single-story cedar-shingled house with lake views and just enough space for the silence he craved. For Frank, that house meant freedom. A place to start over after losing his wife, Alana, to illness 3 years before. Every corner held her memory, the silk robe she used to wear on Sunday mornings, the garden she planted out front, the scent of lavender that still lingered in the hallway. He moved in with quiet pride, but peace in that neighborhood came with a price, and its collector's name was Cynthia Hayes. She was the self-appointed queen of the HOA, a woman who believed rules weren't meant to protect community but to assert control. She appeared the day Frank moved in, clipboard in hand, a permanent squint of disapproval. "Sir," she said before he'd even unloaded his boxes, "your mailbox isn't in compliance with HOA standards. It'll need to be replaced." Frank, polite to a fault, smiled and said, "Of course." He changed the mailbox that very week, but what he thought would end a nuisance only fed it. Soon, the notices multiplied. Fines for his trash bin placement, warnings about the height of his hedges, citations for having a work vehicle in the driveway overnight. To Cynthia, Frank was an outsider, quiet, private, and black in a neighborhood that pretended to be colorblind but never quite was. Frank tried to ignore it. He paid the fines, followed the rules, kept his dignity intact. But Cynthia mistook his calm for submission. Every victory emboldened her, and soon, her visits became less about violations and more about power. Then came the Tokyo assignment, a 6-figure cybersecurity contract that would require him to spend 3 weeks overseas. HOA policy required notice of any extended absence, so Frank, ever by the book, sent Cynthia a polite email with his travel dates. He didn't think twice about it, but Cynthia did. A week into his trip, strange notifications began popping up on his phone. His smart thermostat had been adjusted. His fridge reported new groceries. The system logged door openings. At first, Frank thought it was a glitch, but when he accessed his security feed, what he saw made his stomach twist. Cynthia. Sitting on his couch, bare feet propped on his coffee table, glass of wine in hand, laughing beside her husband, Greg. They weren't just inside, they were living there. They raided his pantry, wore his slippers, cooked in his kitchen. On one feed, he even saw them host guests, pouring drinks, laughing, using his living room like it was a weekend retreat. But the moment that broke something inside him came late one night. The camera in the bedroom showed Cynthia in Alana's robe, the one Frank hadn't been able to move from the chair since she passed. Cynthia spun in front of the mirror, giggling, sipping wine. That's when the calm man turned cold. He didn't call the police. He knew how easily this could be twisted. He needed evidence. Airtight, undeniable. So Frank did what he did best. He documented everything. He downloaded the footage, gathered timestamps, screenshots of smart home logs, and audio files. He even captured a phone conversation where Cynthia admitted she had his travel dates and would be out before he came back. Frank sent it all to his attorney, Philip Granger, a man who'd seen too many HOA tyrants get away with too much. Together, they built a plan, simple but effective. Come home early, Philip said. Quietly. Don't confront her, don't argue. Let her expose herself. She'll panic, she'll lie, she'll make the mistake we need. And that's exactly what happened. Frank's flight landed 2 weeks ahead of schedule. He didn't tell anyone. No social media posts, no emails. He arrived late afternoon carrying nothing but his briefcase and exhaustion. When he stepped into the house, Cynthia froze mid-sip. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Who are you? She demanded, her tone teetering between fear and arrogance. Frank's voice was calm. You know who I am. When she realized the charade wouldn't work, she tried the next move, weaponizing fear. She grabbed her phone, voice trembling theatrically. A black man is breaking into this house. I'm alone and terrified. Please hurry. Frank simply stood there, recording. Minutes later, the distant wail of police sirens grew louder. Cynthia straightened her robe, already crafting tears. When the cruisers pulled up, she rushed outside, voice breaking just enough to sound believable. He forced his way in, she cried. The two officers, one male, one female, approached Frank cautiously, hands hovering near their holsters. Sir, can we see some ID? Frank nodded, handing over his license. Then, wordlessly, he opened his briefcase and took out the property deed, the legal documents with his name printed clear as daylight. The officers exchanged glances. Cynthia's smile faltered. Then Frank pressed a button on his phone and played the video. Cynthia and her husband laughing in his living room, her wearing the robe, her voice bragging about staying until he comes back. The officers watched in silence as the truth unfolded frame by frame. When the video ended, the female officer turned to Cynthia. Is this you? Cynthia's lips trembled. That's not what it looks like. But it was. Within minutes, the cuffs were on her wrists. Her husband was brought out, handcuffed, confused, demanding explanations. The officers read the charges: trespassing, theft, filing a false police report. Neighbors peeked through their blinds as the HOA queen was led away. The same woman who'd once fined people for leaving their trash bins out an hour too long now stood crying beside a police cruiser. Frank didn't gloat. He didn't even speak. He just watched, silent as ever, the embodiment of control. The fallout came fast. Cynthia was removed from her HOA position. Local news picked up the story. Sponsors pulled from her husband's business. Within months, their house went up for sale, and the Hayes name became a cautionary whisper around the neighborhood. Frank restored his home quietly. He replaced Alana's robe with care, repainted the walls she'd touched. For the first time in years, he felt peace. Not the fragile kind that comes from avoiding conflict, but the real kind that comes when truth wins. Justice hadn't come from rage. It came from patience, from letting arrogance destroy itself. Cynthia learned what happens when entitlement meets evidence. And Frank, he learned that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Because sometimes the calmest person in the room is the one holding every receipt. If you believe in stories where karma finally clocks in, hit that like button, share this story, and drop your location in the comments.